Welcome in, boys and girls, to Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, coming a little bit later than normal to you this afternoon on Thursday because I've been working on revisions to the book, and I'm going to be honest with you, I just totally lost track of time when you're dominating and about to get your book finished, and there's so many details that you're trying to make sure you get right. Sometimes the clock just zooms past you. I didn't look for a couple of hours. I looked down. Suddenly I realized it was 3 o'clock. But have no fail, your boy is still here to break down all the news of the day. I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show, brought to you by SportsbookReview.com. Want to tell you to go check out SportsbookReview.com right now for the best odds on Game 5 tonight between the Washington Capitals and the Vegas Golden Knights. And also tell you, if you are going to be gambling on Justify in the Preakness this weekend, which is going to be taking place, I believe, right? Whichever place it is, the third leg of the Triple Crown. I'm telling you right now, you ought to go check that out, and you can see it for sure at Sportsbook Review, the Belmont Stakes. My bad, whatever it is. It's already this horse has already won the Preakness. It's already won the Kentucky Derby. He's going at the Belmont. Make sure you get the best number and that you don't end up getting a bad number. Go to sportsbookreview.com and check out all of the different places that are offering gambling numbers. All right. Also, want to tell you, if you have a home right now and you have a high rate of mortgage, and many of you do, I'm telling you right now that you should refi, not only for that high rate of mortgage, but also if you have credit card debt. It's easy to run up credit card debt. It's easy to suddenly end up out in Vegas spending a lot more money than you anticipated. In the summer, you take a family vacation. The hotel room ends up being more expensive. Maybe you're going to Disney World. Next thing you know, you're thousands of dollars in the hole. If you own a home, you probably have really high level of equity right now. I've owned a home in Nashville for a long time. Property values keep exploding here. I've got a massive amount of equity. If I needed money, the place I would go to tap it is not to my credit cards to pay 20% interest. It's to my own existing home loan. And right now, my guy Ryan Kelly at thehomeloanexpert.com can cash you out of all of your credit card debt and give you equity value for your home. It's simple, it's easy, it's fast. Go to thehomeloanexpert.com. Tell them Clay Travis sent you. Wipe out all of your credit card debt once and for all. Okay, we got a loaded show today. The Warriors win the NBA title as Kevin Durant is unstoppable last night. Steve Harvey goes on SportsCenter on ESPN and calls all of the Golden State Warriors gorillas. And can the Caps end the DC title drought that has existed since 1993 when the Redskins won the Super Bowl? All of that and more to discuss. We begin with Kevin Durant, who was on fire last night. The NBA effectively ended when Kevin Durant made the decision to go to the Golden State Warriors. For the past 2 years, the Golden State Warriors have been the unquestioned best team in the NBA. Last night, they proved it once more. The NBA could have helped to solve this by setting up 1-16, but in general, Kevin Durant has proven that he is probably the second best player in the NBA. Since he left the Oklahoma City Thunder, they are 3-8 in the postseason. They have never won a series. Since Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors, they are 31-6. Only one team has lasted longer than 5 games in a series against them. It does not look like the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be the second team. The shots that Kevin Durant were hitting last night were flat out unbelievable shots. He hit 4 different shots, according to Sportsbook Review, from 30 feet or deeper. That's more than the rest of the NBA players combined in the final couple of rounds of the playoffs. He has been on fire, and it is remarkable to see. He hit the same identical shot almost in Game 3 of this series to end the series as he did in Game 3 last year. And I think LeBron and the Cavs, I'm going ahead and telling you, I think LeBron and the Cavs are going to mail it in on Friday night. I think this series is officially over. I think the Golden State Warriors are going to sweep. It'll be the third title in 4 years for the Warriors. And the question will become, where is LeBron going to go? Yesterday and this morning, I used my advice to tell LeBron to take less than a guaranteed full max contract deal and go somewhere where he could win a title. I think the best option he has is right now, frankly, Houston. I think that's the best option he has if he takes less money. I think that James Harden, Chris Paul, the talented three-point shooting crew that they have down there, if he takes less than full money, the Houston Rockets were close to beating the Golden State Warriors this year. If you gave them an opportunity to add LeBron James, I think they could go toe-to-toe officially with the Golden State Warriors. So I think that makes the most sense. I think going to Golden State makes the most sense for LeBron James. Now, I think there are other ways to go if Kevin Durant decides to leave. He's a big favorite to re-up again with the Golden State Warriors. If that happens, if Kevin Durant stays there, then the only way you can beat the Warriors is if you create another super team. Maybe you could create a super team in Los Angeles with the Lakers. I don't think that's very likely. Maybe you could create a super team if you went and joined the Boston Celtics. I don't buy that Kyrie Irving is going to be arguing for LeBron James to come back, because the reason he wanted to go to Boston was to be able to get away from LeBron James. So I think the play, if you are LeBron James and you are surveying the basketball landscape, is not to go to the 76ers and fit in somehow with Joel Embiid, who's a traditional big man, and turn him into Chris Bosh. I don't think it makes sense to go to the 76ers with Ben Simmons, who can't shoot from outside, and have two guys who need the ball. I think that I think that LeBron James, in conjunction with James Harden and with Chris Paul, could put together a team that's good enough. I don't think anywhere else he could go is going to contend for a championship. If you are LeBron James at this point, if you are LeBron James at this point, the only thing that matters is winning titles. And so to me, this is by far the best decision that could possibly be made. I go big time, zero doubt, 100%. I go with LeBron James to Houston. All right. I think here's the other thing. Last night, and by the way, the Warriors are great. Next year they'll be the favorite again. We'll see where LeBron James ends up going. We'll see where Kevin Durant goes. The NBA offseason is way more entertaining than the NBA regular season, and we're going to be talking about it a lot on Outkick as I have months of shows to do. Your boy's not taking a early vacation this year, so I'm not going anywhere until July 7th when I'm going to be gone for a week. July 27th when I'm going to be gone for a week. That means I got like 6 weeks of nothing to fill, 15 hours a week. So load up. We're going to have a lot of fun when there's absolutely no sports to discuss at all. Lock and load, boys and girls. By the way, next week I will be in New York City Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday doing the show from Manhattan. And then we are doing the show live from Shinnecock Hills, just so I can say Shinnecock as many times as possible. We'll be doing the show live from the U.S. Open on Thursday and Friday, which should be really cool to be there. Hopefully we'll get some good guests. I have no idea how it will go. More importantly, I'm just hoping that somebody ends up being willing to actually be there to let me work on Thursday and Friday. All right, let's talk about Steve Harvey. I am one of the people out here, one of the very few, who tries to request, this is all I demand, that you try and treat everybody equally. Now let's review. If you aren't familiar with Doug Adler is a longtime tennis announcer for ESPN who was fired in January of last year after he went and said that Venus Williams in an Australian Open tennis match was charging the net and putting on the gorilla effect, meaning that he was talking about guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla, not gorilla, Gorilla. All right? Steve Harvey goes on ESPN yesterday, and he says, as part of his analysis of the game, that he thinks the Warriors are going to be tough to beat because they have a lot of gorillas. And then he went on to say they have a lot of 800-pound gorillas. In other words, Steve Harvey directly called the Golden State Warriors majority black team gorillas. What was the response from ESPN, from Disney, from ABC, the company that employs both of these men? When Doug Adler used the word gorilla, as in guerrilla warfare, they fired him because they said it was too close to calling a black athlete the word gorilla. They fired him. His career is over. If you haven't paid attention to this story, it is, I think, symptomatic of the age that we live in. He was so distraught over what happened to him that his doctors say he ended up having a heart attack. He almost died. He has been kicked to the curb. He has been unable to find work since. It is one of the most unfair treatments I have ever seen of anyone in the world of media. When you then go back and look at the larger context of what Steve Harvey said, Steve Harvey specifically called a majority black team live on ESPN SportsCenter gorillas, and nothing has happened to him at all. Now, I'm not one of these people who believes that we should diagnose every single word that somebody says on television and radio and immediately demand that everybody be fired. I think the precedent that we've set there is a bad one. But I got to tell you this. It doesn't matter at all. The standards for speech cannot be different based on what your race is. And I think context matters. We can also talk about Roseanne Barr tweeting that Valerie Jarrett looked like a member of Planet of the Apes. She was immediately fired. There was no doubt what was going to happen. She was immediately fired. There was no way to keep her there. Everybody was gone. I just want people to be held to the same standard. I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's irrational. I don't think that is racist. I think that if you are going to say that it is improper for Roseanne Barr to refer to Valerie Jarrett as a primate, that you should at a minimum consider that Steve Harvey probably shouldn't do the same thing. And also, I think that you shouldn't fire Doug Adler, who doesn't even use the same word, but just used a word that sounds something like a word that is dealing with the animal. If I told you which of those two people had behaved in the most inappropriate fashion, I doubt very many of you at all would say, oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the person who's behaved the most inappropriate there is Doug Adler. He is being held to a different standard than anyone else. And that, I'm telling you right now, is why we have such a fundamentally broken way that we talk about race in America today. I have a crazy opinion. I think everybody should be held to the same standard. I think the way that we cure inequality to the extent that it exists in our country is by treating everybody equally, not by establishing different standards for speech for some people based on things that they can't control, such as their race. In my new book, I talk about this. And in particular, I start off a chapter by saying, hey, what if I began every opinion that I share with you by saying, as a brown-haired white person with green eyes, I believe, all of you out there would look at it and say, that's absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand why you need to tell me that you are a brown-haired white person with green eyes before you give your opinion on what your opinion is, right? There's nobody out there at all that would hear that and think, oh my God, you know what? This makes sense. Clay Travis is, oh, he's brown-haired and he's green-eyed and he's white. I have to give even more credence to his opinion than I ever thought I would believe it before. One of the most ridiculous things I see happening now in the identity politics age is when I put on the television and there's like a transgender black woman on. She starts off her opinion by saying, as a transgender black woman, and my response is, why does that matter? First of all, I can see you. I can see what color you are. I can value that as I see fit. Why should your opinion be predicated in any way by your identity? It's nonsensical. And so this idea that we have different opinions that are allowed to be expressed based on the color that somebody's skin is, wait for it, racist. I also think that context matters. So if you want to make an argument to me that what Roseanne said about Valerie Jarrett was indefensible because she attacked an individual person in a negative way, I can understand that from a pejorative sense. You can make the argument, okay, Steve Harvey meant it in a positive fashion. Still doesn't make sense. Does that mean that it's okay to compare black athletes to gorillas if you're doing it in a positive way? And also, by the way, the Golden State Warriors are not a team made up of really strong physical beast type guys. It doesn't make any sense. So Roseanne should have just said, oh, I thought the Planet of the Apes were really attractive, and I was trying to compliment Valerie Jarrett when I compared her to an ape. No, that's illogical. Doesn't make any sense. Either you can do it or you can't do it. Either it's offensive or it's not offensive, and context matters. Furthermore, I'm telling you this right now. How does it make any sense at all for Doug Adler to have been fired? How does it remotely make sense that the standard that ESPN and Disney set forward in that case was, think about this, the standard they set forward was, if you use a word that sounds like it might be inappropriate, we'll still fire you because you shouldn't be using that word. This is unbelievable to me. He's a homophonic racist. Remember, homophones were words that sound alike but had different meanings. He can't say gorilla effect during a Venus Williams match without being fired. He could say it for every other match that he might have ever called. This is a huge, flagrant double standard. It is completely broken. And Doug Adler right now is in the middle of a lawsuit with ESPN. They are defending themselves, saying they were 100% within their rights to fire him. I think it's a fundamentally broken argument. I think it makes no sense whatsoever. And I think reasonable people with reasonable minds need to start making the connections here and recognizing that we live in a world where speech should be allowed and permissible for everybody, and context should matter, and it doesn't matter here at all. If Brian Windhorst had sat down on ESPN yesterday and when asked whether or not the Golden State Warriors were going to be able to come back and or whether the Cavs were going to be able to come back and beat the Warriors, and he'd said, I don't think so. The Warriors have a bunch of gorillas out there. They're going to be way too tough to beat. Just like Steve Harvey did, he would have been immediately fired. And it would be the number one story in America. And it wouldn't matter if Brian Windhorst was the least racist person in America. It would be the number one story on ESPN. It would be the number one story on CNN. It would be the number one story on MSNBC. It would be the top story in America. And everybody would be sitting around saying, oh my God, can you believe how racist Brian Windhorst is? If it's not appropriate for everyone at ESPN to say, how do you make the decision to allow some people to say it and other people to not say it? I like Steve Harvey. I think he's funny. I think that the fact that this story is not as big as the Roseanne story is evidence of how the media picks and chooses the stories that they want to be big based on the people who are involved as opposed to the equities of these facts that are involved in each story. And this is why my book focuses on stories like these so much, because the media, in deciding not to turn certain stories into controversies in the way that they've protected Michael Bennett, in the way, by the way, that it's been 1 year since LeBron James alleged that there was racist graffiti on his gate, and it's never been a single shred of evidence about it, and the only person you've ever heard mention it is me. I'm telling you right now, the media does not just call balls and strikes. What I do on this show on a regular basis is I sit down, look at the evidence, and I treat everybody the exact same, whether it's a guy, whether it's a girl, whether it's a Muslim, whether it's a Christian, whether it's a Jewish person, whatever color you are, I don't care. I treat everybody the exact same. That's the way to be equal in this country. It's not to set forward speech rules for some people and not allow speech rules for other people. That's how we end up in these broken areas of the world right now, where people don't trust the media, where people don't trust politicians. It's because everybody's trying to justify their worldview instead of just actually applying the rules fairly and without any bias at all. So this bothers me a great deal. I think it's unfair. Doug Adler has been unfairly treated. He's been publicly branded a racist. He didn't do anything wrong at all. And to me, the fact that Steve Harvey can go on ESPN. Remember, Doug Adler did this on a ESPN Plus program, not even a large audience. And this is just frustrating to the nth degree that we've ended up in this kind of situation in this country. All right, final. Any questions? Any questions about this? Any questions about this at all? I'm happy to answer them. Congratulations to the Warriors on winning a title. And Doug Adler deserves all of the money that ESPN is trying to avoid giving him for unjustly firing him. It's really just an awful situation. It's now been 2 years that he's been unemployed, and he's in the middle of a fight with ESPN right now. And this story, I think, is going to help him because ESPN turning a blind eye to a situation like this is absurd. I don't blame any of you for quitting to watch mainstream news and everything else. I think this helps Doug a great deal. Colangelo. I meant to mention Colangelo. If you haven't been paying attention to the Brian, I think it's Colangelo story of Philadelphia 76ers, he's resigned and said his wife was behind all of the mystery Twitter accounts. I can totally see that. I said this on this show. I said it on my radio show. When I read all the evidence in this case, I said I think the result is going to be that his wife was the one with all of the Twitter burner accounts, and that is going to make the most sense when you actually break it down and look at all the evidence. I think the wife was upset about the criticism that her husband was facing. I think she created a bunch of Twitter burner accounts to go on and defend him, and as a result, that is what was transporting there. Yeah, the Ringer reported that it was Colangelo himself. I think they got the story right about exactly what was going on, but they managed to actually miss the underlying story. Yes, just like Roger Goodell's wife, I think there are a lot of wives out there. I think there are a lot of wives out there that feel like their husbands, probably moms, maybe some dads, certainly some kids, significant close family members who feel like they are going to treat everybody, who are angry at the media and who feel like their significant other deserves to be offended, and it just makes them feel a little bit better to be able to go on to social media and fire back instead of just taking the hits all the time. I think that's what happened here. I think it's probably not that uncommon. I bet there were a lot of wives, a lot of husbands who came home and said, baby, I understand that you love me. Could you please tell me right now if you have any burner accounts? And if you do, delete them all and never get on social media again. I've said this story a bunch of times, but I had to tell my mom to get out of the comments and not start fighting with people over what was said about me in the media at large. That was completely unfair to her. I understand you know a significant person who's in your family, your son, your daughter, your wife, your husband. You want to defend them. It's completely natural. But there's nothing to be gained from it. I think the Ringer got it wrong. I think if the story had come out initially as Brian Colangelo's wife has all of these different burner accounts, I don't think he ever would have lost his job. I think the Ringer's report that he was, in fact, the person who was operating all these accounts got stuck in everybody's head, and as a result, he had to resign. Maybe they paid him off to leave, but that is an ugly situation. I've told this story before, too. I was, during the middle of the Cam Newton mess, Paul Feinbaum was going after Gene Chizik aggressively on his radio show out of Birmingham, and I well remember right after the comeback game, the 28-27 comeback that Auburn won on the road at Tuscaloosa, I was standing next to Feinbaum, and Gene Chizik's wife stared him down like if she had a gun, she would have pulled it out and started to shoot at him. And she continued to do that throughout the entirety of the interview of her husband. She was angry. She was furious. And the truth of the matter was, I totally understand why she was angry. Not because her husband necessarily was 100% in the clear with the Cam Newton stuff. Who knows? But because she was upset at all the criticism that her husband was taking. And so it wouldn't shock me at all if a wife like that, who's that angry at the way that she feels the media is treating her husband, went out and decided to create her own accounts. Again, I think the Ringer did a fundamental unfairness in general to Colangelo here, because if the story had accurately reported, hey, this Colangelo account is in some way tweeting out all these interesting things, but we're not sure who it is, or if the story had gotten it right from the get-go and the report had been that it was the wife from the get-go, I think a lot of people would have said, hey, you know what, this is unfortunate, but I'm not surprised that his spouse would do this. He shouldn't do this anymore. Again, the Roger Goodell's wife had a burner account that she was defending her husband on too. The Wall Street Journal caught her, and a lot of people out there said, you know what, this makes me like Roger Goodell more because it humanizes him and proves that he does care what people are saying about him out there all the time. If they both use the burner accounts, then he should go. I don't think there's any doubt. If you have a fake burner account and you are out there saying bad things about someone, I think you should go. I've never had a Twitter burner account. So the idea that anybody out there, that I would allow anybody else out there to say what I'm going to say on Twitter and not get credit for it, I'm too cocky to do it. I've got 600,000 followers on Twitter. I want all the credit or all the blame for everything that I send out on a regular basis. So the idea that I would allow anybody to do that for me is laughable. But I totally understand why if you were not allowed to share your opinions on a regular basis, you might be of the opinion that that is something that that makes a lot of sense. All right? And so I think this story is unfortunate. I feel bad for Colangelo, and it's a good question to ask me about it. I should have put it in on the story. I want all the credit, or I want all the blame. I would never let anybody else get credit for what I write. Finally, will there be a final end to the Washington, D.C. title drought in the Capitals win tonight? Capitals have the last chance to really play in a competitive series until the World Cup starts. What's the first day of the World Cup? It's next week, right? I'm going to have to watch all these World Cup matches. I think a lot of them are going to be on during my show because there's not going to be any other sports taking place. I was kind of hoping we would get a long NBA series or a long NHL series. It doesn't appear necessarily that we're going to get either of those. I think that that is a huge story. I'm excited for Washington, D.C. I'd like to see the Capitals get the win. And if it could happen, then it would be big because we'd have a big debate about which city is the most cursed now. Right now, my top list, in no particular order, of the most cursed sports cities in America who have not won titles recently, I would go with Buffalo, New York. I would go with Minneapolis, St. Paul, Atlanta. I would go with the state of Tennessee, which is on a long drought if you combine Memphis and Nashville and Knoxville for all the major teams in that state. And I would go with Cincinnati. Those are the cities that immediately kind of come to mind as my top 5 most title-stricken cities. The Reds won a title in 1990. The Cincinnati Reds did. It has been a long time otherwise since then. At Charlotte, I count the Carolina Hurricanes, who I think won like 12 years ago. And Charlotte only has 2 teams. The Reds were in 90. Yeah, I think Kansas City would have been near the top of the list, you poor bastards who were Chiefs fans. What other cities would you suggest to me are also on that list of, again, my 5, in no particular order? Buffalo, Cincinnati, Atlanta, the state of Tennessee, if you combine all of the different geographic regions where the state has not won a title since 98 with Tennessee, and also whatever other city was out there, Minneapolis. Phoenix is interesting. Now, the Diamondbacks have won a title, right? Dallas, I'm not an expert on. How long has it been since Dallas won a title? The Stars won titles in the 2000s, didn't they? I think that happened. The Arizona Diamondbacks won a title, didn't they? In the 2000s, early on in the 2000s. Yeah, the San Diego's tough. San Diego is tough because they're in a prolonged drought. They also lost the Chargers. They lost their NBA team back in the 70s. Houston finally won one with the Astros, and otherwise they wouldn't have gotten one if Michael Jordan had never retired. Yeah, the Mavs. Yeah, you guys in Dallas are crazy. The Mavs won a title with Dirk Nowitzki the first year that the Heat were there. Come on, you guys are idiots. Mavs beat the Heat. Let's get out of here with you Dallas loser talk. Yeah, so I think those 5 cities. I think the 5 cities that I named, we're going to be breaking it down. If the Caps win tonight, they will end the long drought of the Washington area. So we will talk about all that and more. I appreciate all of you. Encourage you to go listen to the show tomorrow. Download the podcast. Millions of you are doing it. And by the way, the book, if you haven't checked out my new book, Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, it's up on Amazon. We have the greatest cover in the history of book covers. This Kaepernick versus Donald Trump debate is going to continue. I think it is absolutely fantastic. You guys are going to love it, and we are going to sell a lot of them. DBAP, boys and girls, as I said yesterday, don't be a pussy. But if you're asked to baptize anybody in a crocodile-infested lake, do be a pussy. Sometimes be a pussy. DBAP is the general rule, but sometimes SBAP. I will see you guys later tomorrow, early morning tomorrow. Also, we'll have the mailbag, and I appreciate all of you. Hope you've been playing the gambling picks. We've been on a roll in the NBA Finals. I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. I will see you guys tomorrow. SBAP with crocodiles or snakeheads. We're going to have the rattlesnake head tomorrow. I promise you're going to absolutely love this story if you haven't heard it already. Kisses from me to you. I'm Clay Travis, and this has been Outkick the Show.